Hey guys, welcome back to the Whole Shot. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the Sierra Cova Crusher 2.0 race that we just went to this past weekend. Talking all about it, including how badly I trashed my brand new bike. So stick around. All right, welcome to another episode of the Whole Shot. Today's episode is all about the post-COVID Crusher 2.0, talking about that race, and then a little bit about some races that are coming up. So, with that, let's dive right into it. So, this last weekend, just a few days ago, here we attended the Cova Crusher 2.0, put on by the Sierra Racing Series. By we, I mean myself, and I've got Dusty here with me again, as well as Andy. Andy comes to us all the way from North Carolina. And so let's just dive right into it and talk about this race. So we all raced the bronze class. So let's talk a little bit about like what your expectations were and what did you think you were getting into? Because none of us had ever raced this race before. So what did you guys think, or what did you think you were getting into?
Well, I don't know. We may have to talk about the accommodations first. So, me not having my own trailer or whatever to sleep in, I decided I'm shacking up in Dusty's shaggin' wagon, right? So we get down there. He's got this RV. Anybody that's seen it probably remembers it. We'll put it that way. It's a classic. We'll put it that right. It's a classic. But so I'm sleeping in the, what do you call it? The crow's nest, if you will, above the driver's seat. And Dusty tells us ahead of time that, well, the heater doesn't work, but it's okay because I got an electric heater. And then we're like, all right, well, okay. So we get down there and I'm like, hey, I brought another electric heater. You want to run them both? And he's like, yeah, cool. So we go to bed. I'm in, your basic 40-degree sleeping bag, shorts and a t-shirt, good to go. And it's nice and cozy. Except in the middle of the night, we pop the circuit breaker because it can't handle the amperage load for two heaters. And it gets freezing cold, man. I'm up there right beside the giant window, freezing my what off, man. But so yeah, we were really refreshed, ready to go the next morning.
And it was cold that night. What did it get down to?
Oh my gosh, it was in the low 30s at best.
Yeah, it was cold.
I mean, it was 34 degrees when we started the race.
Yeah, well, I feel for you guys. I was nice and warm in the moto hauler, so.
Yeah.
I was warm. I don't know what they were complaining about.
Oh yeah, you're back there in the queen size bed with the big comforter and stuff.
Hey, I left you an extra blanket up there.
And I used it, man.
I know.
When we signed up for this race, it was going to be like mid to upper 50s during the day. And I don't remember what the lows were, but it was 40s, I think. And that was 2 or 3 weeks beforehand. And then just every day it kept getting worse and worse and worse. Yeah. So then we get there Friday, and Friday night it rained, and it rained pretty much all night, I think.
Oh yeah, it did. I could hear it. Yeah. All right, so expectations. So I've ran a few hard enduros before, done TKO, Battle the Goats, Saddleback. Haven't raced at this place before, but it looks a lot like, it's pretty close to where TKO is located geographically. So kind of expected the same thing. Had watched videos from the previous year. Honestly, I thought they were going to send us up I don't know if you call it the waterfall line, all those rock ledges on that creek. And that was what I was probably most concerned about, but they didn't run the bronze or iron class up that. So I guess overall, I didn't think the terrain was that bad.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if that was a last minute decision or they never planned on sending us through there, but I agree. And like none of the terrain was especially difficult, at least compared to the ones I've been to, like Saddleback and TKO, where there are some pretty big obstacles. I mean, chest high logs or, rocks the size of cars and things like that. There was nothing really like that. But the mud, the rain definitely made it hard for me.
Yep.
It was greasy.
Yeah, I actually expected the mud. We knew going into it, it's going to be muddy and rainy. And actually, I think I made a really good tire choice because Battle the Goats, same thing. Rained all night before that, and it was super slick. And I ran an Ibex there, and it was really bad in the mud. It was great on rock, but in the mud, it just really struggled. So I switched over to the Gnarly, is what I ran, and ran it at 1 psi, tubeless in the rear, and it did fantastic, I thought.
Yeah, I ran the Ibex at Saddleback last year, and I thought the same thing. It was great on the rocks, but it wasn't wet. But it was not that great on the loose dirt, on the real soft stuff. So I ran the JX, what is it, JX8, the Gakoda, whatever IRC. It did pretty well. I ran 3 pounds, and really, I probably should have aired it down even more, but it did pretty well, I thought. What tire did you have, Dusty? I don't remember.
I ran a 130 gauntlet
Gauntlet.
at 2 pounds.
How'd that do? Well, you know
Well,
what? Maybe we shouldn't talk about that yet.
It did great. Best tire I've ever used. Mine looks brand new. I don't know why you guys are complaining.
Mine looks pretty good too.
Mine looks perfect. So I could go another couple of races on it.
I can't see mine through the frozen dirt just yet, but when I get around to washing it, I'll see how it looks.
Destroyed.
Nah, it didn't look too bad when I looked at it that day at the end of the race, but yeah, so I didn't know what we were getting into either. I thought maybe the terrain was going to be harder. I mean, it was pretty hard still for me anyway, just because of the slickness. But yeah, there were no huge, crazy obstacles or anything like that. So
yeah, they definitely cut us around the hard stuff. The loops for the gold silver were quite difficult. I was just watching some video on it. And,
yeah, I saw.
they had some tough stuff.
Yeah, those looked rough. Yeah. All right. So you guys, I guess let's talk a little bit about our experiences. Like, what did you think of the course itself, and how'd you do? And
all right, who's going to tell their story first?
I don't know. Should we start with the shortest one? Which one will go the quickest? We can start with that one.
I think we know who that is. So yeah, let's start with the shortest one.
Right.
Y'all jinxed me.
We did.
Kevin and Josh did. The podcast before, on the last vlog, they were making a joke about my clutches. And I hadn't had clutch problems in like a year and a half. I bet you it's got the same clutch in it. It's been in there for a year and a half. And yeah, sure enough, it came back to bite me. Prepped the bike, went to take it off the line. It was actually the first time I really rode it the whole year. Pretty much slapped it together a couple of days before the race. Was pretty happy with how everything felt. But when I went up to the line, other than a little bit of a slight off idle bog, which I fixed pretty quick, I noticed my Recluse wasn't engaging properly. So I flipped back around, ran back to the camper, grabbed the 4 mil Allen so I could adjust it. And I was literally adjusting it all the way up to pretty much the start flag went. We took off. We went around the starting line and around that first corner. And sure enough, I actually rode up next to Kevin, tapped him on the arm. I was like, I got to stop, because you could feel it wasn't right. So I kept adjusting. I made an adjustment, went on, rode for a little bit until we got to that first big bottleneck down in the creek, and I adjusted it again. Rode through the bottleneck and then continued on our way through what would have been checkpoint 1 if it was still there, which they weren't scoring it that first time through. Proceeded to start working my way through fucking people and catching up after stopping twice to get up that first hill and the first bypass for bronze. And about halfway up, the clutch just went. There was virtually nothing left to it. I was assuming the EXP disc and the Recluse went. I haven't know for sure. I'll have to tear it apart and measure everything. But I think that EXP disc is like 2 years old, so I got my use out of it. But I tried to adjust it, back the Recluse adjuster all the way off, and ended up spitting a little hydraulic fluid on the trail and tore the back O-ring on the adjuster. Somehow managed to get it back in without it leaking anymore. But then I had to bleed it just to see if I could get a clutch to come in even when it got cold. And went to break the adjuster free, and it broke free. And when I went to kind of snug it up a little so I could start bleeding it, I snapped the bleeder head right off. So my day was done at that point. Made about a half-mile walk of shame pushing my bike back down that hill.
Oh, dude, that sucks.
Yeah, that does suck.
I ended up helping some of the the back markers up some of the tougher stuff because they were in my line trying to get down. And I was like, just come on, I'm gonna pull you up. I got plenty of energy. There was a couple of guys that were already struggling, like going up that first still past the check. You could tell they weren't prepared for it or were just way out of shape and struggling or overriding themselves. So I helped them up a couple gnarly points. But yeah, I ended up having to walk my way back. So my day lasted a whole, I think 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. It wasn't very long.
Yeah. Yeah, that stinks.
All right. So I guess my day had some similarities. So I just rebuilt this engine a couple weeks ago, and I raced Sumter on it and had no issues. But you know, Sumter's a hair scramble. It's fast. It's flowing. You know, and it was cool that day too. But you know, I took off to go to the starting line. I was riding it around to get it warm, and I noticed that my clutch lever the engagement point was further out than normal. I was like, okay, that doesn't seem right. But race started, I took off, you know, went through the little zigzag up the hill through the ravine. Had to wait on the ravine. Some people, they crashed right in front of me, so I waited a little bit there, but kept moving. Went through the creek, got to the first climb, and already I could tell that it was slipping. It wasn't good. So went up that again. A lot of people struggling, but I didn't have that much traction problems. It wasn't bad at all. So climbed up that, past several people, kept going. It kept getting worse. You know, I could tell basically like clutch lever completely out. If you revved it, it was slipping. So I'm trying to baby it, but it's just getting worse. So I don't remember how far I went, but we came to a point where there was kind of like a Jeep trail we were crossing, and it was kind of on level ground. And I got up to the top of that. It was all the bike would do to get up there. So at that point, I was like, I can't make the next climb. It won't even go up a hill at all. So I pulled the old radiator cap off, and I was definitely low. I'm smoking, I'm overheating, I'm boiling. Pull the radiator cap off, you know, like turn your head, the radiator cap goes flying. And so at that point, I needed some water. So I happened to have Propel in my backpack. So, you know, Propel, it's the choice of the new generation. But yeah, so that's what went in my bike. My bike is running on electrolytes right now. So so I filled her up with Propel. That's all I had. And then I rode it back and forth along this dirt trail, just like third gear, just putting in low RPM, trying to get some airflow. And you know, it's starting to get a little better. So then I got the idea. I just stopped in a big deep puddle, and I'm just throwing the water up on it, trying to cool it down. But keep in mind, the water's like 30 degrees. My hands are completely frozen at this point, you know. But I did that enough that I got enough clutch back that I continued on the race, got up the next hill, and I rode around until it wasn't really a full lap because they took you back past the start finish line, kind of on a shorter thing. So when I went past start finish line, I ran over to the pits, see Doogie there already ungeared and everything. I'm like, what are you doing here? You know, but so I get some regular water from him. I top it off again. I make an adjustment to my lever. Off I go back into it. Right. So I go out. It still got hot at times. I had to stop another time and fill some more Propel in there because again, that's what I had. And but I ended up finishing a lap. I think there was probably, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes to go before the 3-hour time limit hit when I finished my first lap. So I continued on to that point until it was after the 3 hours was up. But I probably screwed around a good half an hour just trying to get the clutch to work and all that. So, you know, at that point, I was just kind of just having fun. I mean, obviously my result wasn't going to be spectacular after that much time delay. But overall, I mean, I was fairly happy with the way I rode. I really tried to pace myself a little bit more. At TKO, for example, the first 10 miles, pushed it pretty hard and made a lot of passes and did great. But like after the uphill swamp, I was completely spent. And so this time, you know, I tried to take smaller breaks before I hit a harder obstacle. I thought like that helped a lot. So yeah, I wouldn't say I was really pushing the pace on the easy sections. I was just, you know, conserving energy for the climbs and stuff, but it did pretty well.
Yeah. So for me, So this is a new bike for me. I only had one ride on this bike before this race, this Beta 200, and this thing's got a manual clutch, and I'm used to riding my 250FX with a Recluse for years and years and years. So I knew that was going to maybe be a problem, but I didn't realize how much of a problem. So I get into the race. Me and Dusty, we had this kind of pact before we started out. We were going to do this buddy system, kind of like we did at Saddleback, not knowing what the course was going to be like, so we could help each other along the way. So I'm kind of going with him while he's dealing with these clutch issues until finally, he snaps the thing and he's like, go on without me. And so I take off, and it's slippery. I'm dropping the bike a lot. And so I'm expending some energy, and I'm also killing the bike like constantly. The clutch, I can't get used to the adjustment point yet. So I'm just constantly killing it, restarting it. That messed me up a few times on some hills where I'd kill it and start rolling back and mess me up. And just getting used to the bike took me longer than I expected, like figuring out what gear I had to be in for what type of hill, how steep it was. And by the end of the race, I kind of got that figured out. But yeah, there was a lot of dropping. So I left Dusty, rode for a little while, eventually hooked up with one of our other buddies, Josh, who was at the race as well, kind of met up with him and started riding along with him. But man, by about halfway through the race, like there was nothing really special that happened to wear me out. It was just the constant dropping the bike and spinning on roots and grease and stuff. And I was just getting wiped out. And probably, 2.5 hours in, I was just spent. Like I didn't even know that I wanted to finish the race. And Josh kept pushing me along. Hey, come on, keep going. But I'll tell you what, that last hour of that race, and so I got through the first 2 checkpoints within time, but didn't make it. We finished the lap, but it was after the 3-hour mark. It took me 4 hours to finish that first lap. And that last hour was just brutal for me. I mean, I had no energy. My hand felt like, I couldn't feather the clutch anymore. It was either the clutch was engaged or disengaged. There was nothing in between because my hand just hurt so bad. But yeah, got through the whole thing, got back after, so they had shut down that final checkpoint and pulled off into the parking lot there at the end after 4 hours. But yeah, nothing really out of the ordinary happened along the way. A few crashes here and there. I was kind of going through my race footage earlier today. And just, there were a few things that were interesting. Like, do you guys remember that really super steep downhill? You came down and you went directly to the left and then it looped back around to the right. A lot of guys were walking their bike down there. I don't know.
Oh yeah. I didn't do good there. I screwed that up, but
there were guys kind of going wide and then just falling down that hill and didn't realize it when I was going through, and all these guys are struggling to get back up to the course, that if you just cut back down through the woods, if you just kept going, you'd land right on the course anyway, because it doubled back.
Figures, right?
Yeah. But yeah, there was nothing, I can't think of anything that was just super difficult on the course other than the greasy mud everywhere. Like in the dry, I think we would have probably been flying through there. So yeah, but it was fun.
So
Dan,
where were you when the time limit ran out? Where on the course were you?
I was between the second checkpoint and the end, I don't.
So how'd you get back to the pits?
So we just kept taking the course. We just followed the course. We figured eventually we'd get back around and.
Yeah. So that was another part of my story was, when the time ran out, there was like 2 checkpoints and I'm past both of those. So the only thing you could do was, just follow the course or find a way out. And so I followed the course a little bit, passed a couple of guys that were having some issues, and then came to one of these Jeep roads. So I just said, okay, well, it's going to lead down the hill. It's going to go to the parking lot, right? Why? I don't want to ride, the rest of this course if I don't need to. And so I take off down this Jeep trail, which goes to a bigger kind of road. And so I take off down this road and I go for a pretty good ways. I would say a good half a mile or something. And it just zigzags down the mountain. And I'm like, yeah, it's got to be it. No, it ends up at some dude's property with like no trespassing signs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't even know where I'm at. So I'm like, crap. So I ride back up this thing. I'm screaming back up the hill, I'm having all these thoughts like, I'm going to run out of gas. This is going to be bad. No one's going to know where I'm at. And so I go back up the road part. Well, I missed my turn off where I got on this road. I keep going. I'm like, oh man, I don't recognize this. So I turn back around and I'm like, frick, I'm gonna die up here of pneumonia. So anyway, I stop the bike and I hear another guy riding and I see him through the woods and I'm like, okay. So I chase him down. That got me back to the trail where I'd cut off the trail. I pull up next to him. He goes, how the heck do we get out of here? I'm like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
So we're like, I guess we're going to ride the trail. So we take off riding the trail. And along the way, we collect 2 more guys. One guy's got no fender. I think he was from Florida, his first experience in a hard enduro.
Oh, wow.
After the race, he's like, man, this is, you guys are the real deal. He said, I had no idea what this was going to be. He's like, if anyone wants to buy a gently used KTM, I mean, this thing had been through war. And then we came across another dude that if we hadn't come, I mean, they weren't riding sweep. We ended up kind of being the sweepers because no one was coming as far as I could tell.
Yeah, we did kind of the same thing.
His bike was upside down on a rock cliff and he wasn't getting it out of there had we not come by. So the 4 of us end up, making our way out of there. And right before this is what's really crazy. Right before we get out, a guy comes riding up on a Honda. He's not in gear, he's in street clothes or whatever. He's like, hey, have you guys seen a kid on an 85? And we're like, yeah, it's been a while. I saw him during the race or whatever, on a Husky 85. And he's looking for his son. And I'm thinking, good grief, man. I mean, I think there's supposed to be an age limit on these things anyway. He looked pretty young, being on an 85 and everything. But I don't think I want my kid out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, what was
85 in 30-degree
13?
weather,
Yeah.
So yeah, but hey, it ended up being pretty cool. So the dude that I rode out with, he ended up being from North Carolina as well. His name is Stone, and he's one of the regulars up at Brushy Mountain where we ride a lot. So hey, made a new friend, and we're gonna go riding sometime. So
Nice,
that's cool.
that's cool. Yeah, we did kind of the same thing when Josh and I were coming out. We hooked up with 2 more guys that were trying to get out and kind of going the same pace as us, just trying to get out of there, and kind of went all the rest of the way back with them. So yeah, so let's talk about like damage reports. Dusty already talked about his a little bit. Blew out his clutch, broke the bleeding nipple, whatever. That's it, right?
He didn't have time to break anything else.
Yeah, I think that's all that's wrong with it. I'll tear into it next week and find out for sure. But
Yeah.
clutch pack and an EXP disc, bleeder valve. So pretty light compared to some other people.
Yeah, so I don't know for sure for mine because I haven't watched it to see really what's going on, but I know for a fact I cracked the front fender, I cracked the rear fender. I don't know how or where I did this. I was trying to figure it out watching the video earlier today, but I was riding along, and this is after I hooked up with Josh, and Josh is like, "Hey man, your dust seal popped out of your fork." And so I stop and I'm down there and I'm trying to push this thing back up in the fork and it won't go for some reason, I just can't get it to fit in there. And eventually realized I smashed the fork, the outer fork tube on something and flattened it. So I couldn't even get the dust seal in there. So I bent the fork, bent the upper fork tube. Did I break anything else? Oh, it busted my speedometer. I left the stupid speedometer on the bike and I busted that. And I think maybe
Did you
that's
say
it.
pipe? Did you talk about your pipe?
I dented the pipe, put a huge dent in the pipe.
That's almost a given, right?
It seems like it's a given. Yeah, I may put a guard on after this one.
Because you notice in the picture, you don't have a pipe guard on it.
No, I don't have a pipe guard. Well, they don't. I couldn't. So I'm riding this Beta 200, and I haven't been able to find a good pipe guard. I've seen those carbon fiber ones, and I was just concerned I just cracked those right away. But I did find a guy here locally in the Indy area that said he makes those kind of wraparound ones. So I'll probably have that guy make me one. But yeah, that sucks. So I'm for a bike that had less than 5 hours before this race and still less than 10 hours. I did a fair amount of damage to it, so I'm not super excited about that.
It was nice and pretty.
It was so nice. Look at the picture because it doesn't look like that anymore.
It was immaculate.
It's pretty rough now. But I mean, how about you? Did you have, other than the issues you were having with your clutch?
Yeah, I haven't figured out what was with the clutch yet. I mean, that clutch, it doesn't have that many hours on it, so I think things were just slightly out of adjustment and it got hot or something, but I don't think there's anything major there.
Yeah.
I did take one piece of damage, and it was actually after the race was over. We were riding out, just slipped on some rocks, and front end came out from under me, and the radiator shroud, it
Mhm.
actually broke a piece of that plastic off the radiator shroud, a little chip out of that. So
Hmm.
not too major, but I mean, other than that, yeah, the bike was on the ground, but it seemed like most time it was falling in mud, so it was pretty
Yeah, that's
soft.
good. Yeah, I managed to hit all the rocks. There was one section, I don't remember where we were. It was after the second checkpoint, this little ravine you were going up, and like I had a choice of taking 2 lines through this thing, and on the left one you kind of had to hop up over a gap up onto a larger rock. And I think I probably could have done it if I wasn't just completely wiped out. I had zero energy, and I tried to do that, launched the bike straight up in the air,
Oh,
came down on me, landed on my leg, basically pinned me under it, and I'm so tired I can't even get out from underneath this thing. And luckily there were some guys there watching that helped me out. But yeah, I just used and abused that thing at that race. And I can't even wash it to see what else I have broken, because you didn't have this, but when I got home, all that mud and everything had turned that bike into one huge ice cube. Like I couldn't even roll it out of the trailer. I had to drag the thing out of the trailer because the wheels wouldn't even move, and slide it into the garage. It was,
that is why I moved to North
yeah,
Carolina.
it wasn't 5 degrees there like it was here. It was
I mean,
ridiculous.
it's cold here. It was like 45 today or something. That's cold.
Oh
So,
man. Yeah, it was -2 here this morning.
don't miss that stuff.
No. Um, all right. So final thoughts on Cobra Crusher 2. Like, did you guys enjoy it? Would you do it again?
I would. I mean, honestly, uh, I think bronze class, had we not had the mechanical issues, I think could have done fairly well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I think
it would have been kind of interesting if they had sent us up the waterfall with all the step ups and all that. 'Cause I don't know if bronze did. I think bronze did that last year.
yeah,
Um,
I'm sure they did, because I remember watching the videos.
yeah, I would have this year. That would have been a real problem when I didn't have much clutch and couldn't hardly pop a wheelie.
Yeah,
That would have
that
been
would have
bad.
been hard.
But I was glad to see they didn't do that. So
Yeah, I would have liked it on that too, though. Yeah, they definitely they must have rerouted it. The only one other comment, I guess, about the race was I was surprised. Like, there were, how many people were in our class? 70 something?
73,
Yeah,
something like that,
mid
maybe.
70s. So
I
by
don't
the
know. Pull up the
time
results.
by the time that, yeah, here, I'll pull those up. So by the time that Dusty and I got up there, we couldn't even find a spot in the line. The line took up the entire starting row. So we were actually in row 2 of
Yeah,
bronze.
you guys were kind of late getting there. I was on the front row, but I mean, it was tough getting a spot there.
Yeah. So that's the only thing I thought was weird, that all those bikes. So, there was no way I was getting in front with those many bikes in front of me. So I kind of laid back. And so between that and then Dusty with the clutch issues, I mean, we were pretty much last into that first hill. And by the time we got there, that it was just a mess. We're sitting there. I mean, there were no lines. I mean, maybe for really good guys there were lines, but there were no lines by the time we got there. And you're just kind of waiting and trying to pick through all those bikes. Yeah, 73 riders in the bronze class, and they all took off at once. So,
Pull it
yeah.
up. Let's see where we ended up.
Oh, I
Show
don't wanna
our
look at
shameful
it.
positions.
Yeah, so the guy that got first in bronze, let me put it where I can see it. The guy that got first in bronze, Michael Barrett, got 8 checkpoints. So that's
pretty
2
good for
laps and 2 checkpoints. That's really good. And then the next guy got
He
it,
probably
6
could have been
checkpoints.
competitive in silver, I would think.
Yeah,
Right.
and I wondered about that too. Like, why weren't some of these guys in silver that did so good? 865 checkpoints, and I don't know what the reason is, other than maybe they wanted to do that bronze course instead of the gold and silver course,
Maybe you wanted to win.
or maybe he wanted to get the win. Yeah.
Get a trophy.
So let's see. Let's scroll down. There's Andy, 32nd.
32. Yeah.
So 3 checkpoints. You got the full lap, and then me and Josh, 52nd, 53rd. So 2 checkpoints, but I would like to point out I did finish the lap. It just took me an hour longer than it was supposed to.
Sounds like me at TKO. Finished the lap, just not in time.
And here's Dusty. So yeah, I thought it was fun. I'd definitely go back and do it again. And it's always, once you've ridden it once and you go back, you kind of know what to expect. But, what about you, Dusty? Would you do it again?
Yeah, I'll be back. This whole year for me, I'm pretty much just planning on being a learning experience. It's kind of like, all the local XC stuff. We know what we're getting into now when we go to tracks because we ran them so often. We know what's got terrain, what's fast, what's flowy, et cetera, et cetera. Where here we're basically just diving into an unknown every single time.
Yeah, you don't know.
And with the races, I mean, the next race is in Sequatchie. It's actually on part of the property TKO uses. So we'll have a good idea for that track. But like the track in Virginia, I won't have a clue what to expect there. And the one that is in Alabama again, I think it's a Newmarket. I think it's a GPS race. I'm expecting similar terrain, but I won't know until I get there what to expect really. So for this year, yeah, I'll be back. I'll do them again. It's just a learning experience right now.
Yeah, I agree. You don't know going into it, like, do I need to conserve my energy up front? Do I need to just blast through this thing? Yeah, it's a good point.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So just to wrap up kind of the results, we looked through the bronze stuff. So gold and silver, my predictions were way off, not way off, but Ryder LeBlanc took the first spot. Quinn Wenzel took second, and then Nick Farringer came in third, followed by Jeremiah Burkhardt and Chris Gary. So I haven't seen those guys videoed. I think they've posted them maybe, but I don't know what happened to Nick. I fully expected him to take first, but I need to go out and find his video and see what's going on there.
The American Hard Enduro guys, they had interviews with those 3 dudes on they did a podcast, I think, on the way home. And one thing I remember was Quinn Wenzel. He's on that new bike, right? Which is the old gas,
The
right?
Raiju or whatever.
Yeah. And I think he was leading pretty handily. And he had some sort of trouble with his rear brake caliper packing up with mud, and he had to stop and work on that. I think that's when Ryder passed him. But it sounded like, for being on a new bike and everything, it sounded like Quinn was doing quite well.
Yeah, that's pretty surprising. I mean, being on a completely different bike and still pulling off second place, I mean, that's pretty good. All right, cool. So next race coming up in this SEER series is the Bootlegger Extreme. Do you guys know anything about that race, like the format, or?
Know nothing about it.
Me neither. So like Dusty mentioned, that thing's in Sequatchie near the TTC. So it should be similar. Should be really similar to this Alabama. Like a lot of that terrain in the Cova Crusher looked a lot like the TTC property. But
is that one a regular race? I mean, or is it night race or GPS race or something?
I think it's a regular race.
It's a regular one. And then the next 2 were the night and the GPS races.
All right. I'll have to look at the calendar, see if I can make Bootlegger.
I think it's March 27th.
I might have kid stuff
Yeah.
going on. All my kids' stuff might interfere with that one.
Yep, March 27th, Sequatchie, Tennessee. All right, cool. So what else is coming up? So a little bit about the races coming up. Of course, IXCR is coming up on the 27th of February, and then Crossroads and Extreme XC, and of course the Bootlegger are going to be in March. I listened to Andy, your buddy that does the On the Pipe podcast, and apparently he is now somehow affiliated with the continuation of the Full Gas Enduro, but under a different format.
Right. So that's Tyler Shepardson. We call him T-Shep. Great guy, by the way. So he's always been on kind of the media side of racing and things, and so he does the On the Pipe podcast. So check that out if you haven't subscribed to that one. I think he's on all the platforms. He always has great interviews. Like after Sumter, I mean, he had the interview with Stu Baylor and how he took the chunk out of his side and all that stuff.
Mm.
That was nasty. But yeah, he has, you know, other people involved in this, but they basically purchased the full gas series, as I understand it. But someone else had already started another Sprint Enduro series. So instead of going Sprint Enduro, they're going to do a GP series, which I don't know too much about, but I think they'll be the only one around, and it sounds like fun. So
Yeah, it does sound like fun. That's cool. I'm glad they're continuing it. All right, cool. Anything else?
hey, if you guys watch GNCC this year, you gotta try to track Danger D, or some people know him as Dirt Bike Jesus. His name's Dustin. He's gonna race. So he's a friend of mine, and crazy dude, man, great guy, and ridiculously fast. But he's signed up with a team this year, a full ride, and he's going to race the XC3 class, so KTM 125, and
Oh, wow. That's
and
awesome.
he's got legit chops, man. I mean, I expected to see him on the podium.
That's cool. That's very
Keep
cool.
your eyes out for, and if you see him up there, you're gonna know. I mean, it's totally Dirt Bike Jesus.
Is that what we'll see on the results? Is Dirt Bike Jesus?
I think you'll see it be listed as Dustin, but
Dustin. Cool.
yeah.
Are you guys planning on doing any GNCCs this year?
I haven't planned it yet, but who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, that's it, I guess, for this episode. Thanks for sticking around and listening. And as usual, if you want to catch us on in audio format, you know, we're out on Stitcher and Anchor and Apple and Google and all that good stuff. And we'll catch you on the next episode.
Right on.